What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It is I, your Morphinominal host, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new video as we're set to go ahead and get into Ultraman Trigger episode number 22, last game, as we are inching ever so closely to that finale, guys. I think we've got like 3 episodes left after this one. Haven't seen the preview for next week, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be fire. I'm pretty sure that the momentum to that finale is looking rather good after this particular episode. Rather emotional one when it comes to spotlighting Ignis in here, and perhaps some redemption for Ignis when it comes to battling Hudram, guys, and definitely get an opportunity to see Carmeara ready for some battle by the end of this episode also. So pretty good one. I definitely was certainly a big fan. I did have an issue with maybe one particular scene in here, but we'll definitely go ahead and get into this. But this is definitely a direct continuation from last week as we get revealed to us once again the idea of Ignis capturing Yuna right from under the mouth and the nose of the Gut Select team, most notably Akito and Kengo in here. And Akito has a bone to pick with this man, immediately asking the captain, "Can I shoot this man on sight, please?" Like, he literally has a bone to pick with him. Certainly wants to go ahead and get his hands on him and certainly save Yuna as much as he possibly can. So we definitely see a lot of animosity from Akito going into this battle with Ignis, but it's actually a relatively great conversation that Kengo winds up bringing up in this episode that I'm actually quite fond of, right? The idea of like, what are you willing to do or to sacrifice in order to sort of get back the ones that you certainly loved, right? And I love the fact also that it's not just Kengo having sort of that conversation with Akito as they're going to try and save Ignis or save Yuna from Ignis, but the idea that it's also the Gut Select team that's listening in on their conversation over the comms, right? Pondering that question to Akito, if you were able to get the people that you loved back, what sort of sacrifices would you certainly make in order to do that, right? And while Akito doesn't necessarily answer it, I mean, he definitely returns that question back to Kengo, who's rather uncertain. It definitely does make a lot of the Gut Select team, definitely understand maybe Ignis's position a little bit better, right? I mean, granted, nobody's okay with the idea of Yuna being captured, but it is definitely a lot for them to certainly sink their teeth in, and especially for Akito, in the sense that I love the flashback, because you guys know I'm a huge fan of flashbacks, of going back to an earlier episode where we got to see the death, if you will, of Akito's parents, right? When that first monster attacked their facility, sort of being destroyed, and Akito as a kid pleading for his mom and dad to certainly return, right? To be able to feel that sort of loss of somebody that you love so dearly, I'm pretty sure Akito every day thinks about the idea of what he wouldn't do in order to kind of get them back. You know what I mean? So, being put in that position is definitely a difficult one, to certainly say the least. Not to say that everybody would do what Ignis would certainly do, but it's definitely something worth thinking about, you know what I mean? And maybe taking a step back, and instead of just wanting to take out your anger and your frustration on Ignis and what he did, maybe understanding what he did might put you in a better headspace to really talk him down or talk him out of it, right? Or understand where he's coming from, sort of thing. So I really love that question that Kengo wind up pondering and having everybody really in deep contemplation about what they would do in that situation. So when it comes to Ignis, though, it was a really interesting storyline for him in here, because one of the things that we talked about in the previous episode was the idea that this felt very much like a long con game, right? Like, I was definitely in the mindset of Yuna and maybe Akito in this episode, in the sense of like, have you been playing us like this whole entire time, sort of thing, right? Getting captured, being on the ship, helping us out as much as you possibly can, sort of thing, allowing us to kind of get buddy. Like, was that all just a ruse in order to finally get close and wait for this particular moment when all of our guard is down, and then capture exactly what it is that you absolutely need? And so while I definitely went into this episode certainly thinking that, along with some of the other characters, you do get the opportunity to see that his time with the Gut Select team has made him a little softer, right? Has really strengthened and grown some bonds between these characters, to know that the feelings that we see and the way that he expresses himself around the Gut Select team definitely is genuine to a certain extent. But I always feel, once a treasure hunter, always a treasure hunter. And the fact alone that he actually takes time to leave them a message, right, to explain to them the death of his planet, the idea that he lost his friends and his family by the hands of Hudram, and the idea now is that he's going to go ahead and use Yuna in order to get the Eternity Core for himself and use that power to revive his homeworld. Very powerful stuff here in a sense of what he certainly wants to use it for. But the idea that he leaves them clues, and the idea that he tells them exactly what he's going to do, that he wants to play a game. If you can stop me, you'll get it back. But if you lose, I get the Eternity Core, sort of thing. It's one of those things like, if you were really set on your ways, right? If you were truly set in the idea of accomplishing this and doing this, you probably wouldn't have told anybody, right? Like, you would have just kidnapped Yuna, went straight to the ruins, opened up the Eternity Core, and taken it for yourself and not let anybody know. But the fact that he decides to play it up as a game, he does let the Gut Select team have the opening that he needs, right? And I think the idea that he does that immediately showcases that maybe even he's having doubts. And I love the fact that Yuna kind of calls him out on his BS, right? Like, if that's the case, man, this is the most tragic story ever. The fact that you know what you're doing is wrong, and deep down inside you truly want somebody to stop you, right? Like, is it because you want friends, because you want a family back, right? And you want people to show their true colors and like pull you from the brink to show you that they care, sort of mentality. Like, the fact that he leaves that opening, I think, is rather telling. And I love the fact that somebody like Yuna calls him out on his BS, honestly, at the end of the day. So really powerful stuff, though, that we wind up getting here from Ignis in this particular episode, and to a point to where it almost seems as though his hesitation alone might have actually cost him the goal that he certainly wanted to all along. I mean, eventually he comes by the end of this episode to decide not to take the Eternity Core for himself. I think seeing the sacrifices that other people are making, along with the idea that they're supporting him in his decision to go ahead and try and take out Hudram and finally get that revenge, I think that definitely went an extremely long way when it comes to the Ignis character in here. But his plans almost do come askewed with the sense of Hudram popping up sort of last minute and giving that third option, right? I thought it was interesting that Ignis only had the two options in his mind: either I get the Eternity Core or you guys stop me, and didn't even take into the idea that the person that really ruined his life from the beginning would also possibly have a chance of ruining his life once again. And the actor that plays Ignis in here, man, I absolutely love just his levels of emotions and just his range, just that conversation that he has, or just any time that Hudram sort of shows up, sort of thing, and they're face to face, the emotion, the rage, the anguish that you can see in his eyes. I mean, homeboy's literally just tearing up as he's talking to Hudram, in the sense of like, you're not gonna take this from me, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Trying to play up the idea of, Yuna's already let me in here. The Eternity Core is in my grasp. I don't necessarily need her anymore. Seeing if Hudram would certainly take the bait, he doesn't, and we get to see Ignis wind up being the one to hesitate, and it's Hudram that certainly winds up getting the upper hand in here. But I absolutely love the action in this episode. I thought they had some really great moments. Just getting the opportunity alone to see Hudram versus Ignis once again as Trigger Dark was incredible inside of the ruins. Like, I love, they have so many cool shots, like the idea of them pushing each other through a couple of layers of walls, right? 3 for Hudram, and then Ignis turning things around, and then 3 for Ignis himself to go ahead and push Hudram through. I mean, even the idea of getting the sword from Ultraman Trigger at the end of this episode, like, I had no idea and didn't even think that this battle would be a swordsman battle, right? Like, I always thought it would just be hand-to-hand combat, maybe some power-up sort of thing, but the fact that we literally alone got a sword fight just made it that much more interesting to me, honestly. And great cinematography, great point of views too, like the really close-up section of the battle where you just see them slicing into the camera angles, into the camera. They even had some great like point of view shots where you get, it's like slow-mo point of view shots where you see Hudram like getting ready to dive with his blade, sort of thing, or Ignis getting ready to slice down and Hudram just move barely out of the way. Just really epic sword battle that we wind up getting between these two. I didn't think I needed that in my life, but the fact that they were smart enough to get as creative with it as they did definitely made for a rather enjoyable action sequence in this episode. episode, quite honestly. I also got to give the Nurse Desi a quick shout out. That roll through the attack that was like propelled to them. I think we got introduced to one of the villains in the mecha, Musashin, that unfortunately Kengo pushes the damn button on. Like, that's, if there was a complaint that I had, it probably was that moment. Like, I never realized Kengo to be sort of that absent-minded, but literally when you know that there's a game that's being played by Ignis and it's literally a button there that says do not press, like the fact that Akito was smart enough to be like, dude, this is just a psychological game, come on, man, like let's stop wasting time. And the fact that Kengo of all people is dumb enough, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Really, like you couldn't help yourself? Like, just I just don't imagine Kengo being that idiotic, you know, and the fact that he pushed the button. I mean, granted, I'm sure some people certainly would be tempted, but just based off of the situation alone, it's not like you're walking into this situation blind, right? Like, you clearly know this is a ploy by Ignis, and you still push the button. Winds up leading to a battle that I really wasn't that impressed with, honestly. Trigger versus the mecha warrior that we had in here. Didn't really care for it so much, with the exception of that sweet ass Nurse Desi roll. Great piloting by Tishin in this episode for sure, but I absolutely love that shot. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. But that's exactly where Trigger winds up getting the blade from, that he winds up giving to Ignis in this episode too. A little bit bummed that it's not, while it definitely comes across that Ignis has destroyed and, or at least defeated Hudram, I honestly thought Hudram was done and was down and out, right? Like that Ignis was the one that sort of put the final nail into his coffin, and that's not quite the case. He winds up actually, Hudram winds up actually emerging from the ruins, only to go ahead and bump into Carmeara, which is unbelievable, because I'm like, did she just eat this dude? The fact that she finally gets her revenge, you know, sucks up, you know, just destroys him and like sucks up his dark energy inside of him, and then has the nerve to like wipe her mouth like she just finished a delicious meal sort of thing. I really started busting out laughing. I thought it was so funny that she just literally ate this man. It definitely worked for me, honestly. But you know what? I will say this in regards to Hudram, you know, the underestimating again of Ignis, and seeing how Ignis and his friends or Gut Select team wind up sort of bonding, right? Even seeing Yuna and Kengo's light start to form, and then Yuna passing on that light to Ignis, to where Trigger Dark now gets the opportunity to use that like glitter eternity power that we've seen from Glitter Trigger for a lot of this season so far. I thought it was a really great power up mode, honestly. But the idea of seeing Hudram, you know, get on Ignis's case for counting on his friends, he definitely did not listen to Dargon in the previous episode, because when Dargon, I remember there's a moment where Dargon's in the sea and everybody else is gone, right? And he's looking at the humans and their actions on Earth, and he sees how close they work together and how tight they are in regards to their bond. And then he looks around and he sees all the giants of darkness just nowhere else around, right? Everybody's just kind of taking their own path, right? No longer sort of working together. The fact that he has mentions to the previous giants of darkness before, we shouldn't underestimate these humans, right? Because when they work together, they're at their strongest. And when you look around and you're doing things solo and all alone, all alone, that's when you're about to hit your sort of demise, right? Like, that's when you're certainly at your weakest. And I think this is definitely a valuable lesson that I think Dargon certainly understands, but one that Hudram definitely learned the hard way, despite even getting some of those warning signs from Dargon in this season, letting them know like, hey, you know, don't underestimate these humans and their ability and power when they actually do decide to work together, right? It's rather formidable, and Hudram got the opportunity to experience that sort of really firsthand in here. But overall, enjoyable episode. I definitely enjoyed it for certainly what it was. The emotional stakes for Ignis were definitely in here. I loved his connection with the Gut Select team and showcasing that he's not just a treasure hunter. There truly has been a bond that's definitely been growing between these two. And then just getting an opportunity to see the Gut Select team trying to step into Ignis's shoes for a moment and start having faith in him in regards to some of his decision making towards the end, and really understanding why why he was trying to do what he was doing, and them helping him kind of go down the right path. And certainly it definitely worked. And I'm pretty sure we'll definitely go ahead and see him again. I know he kind of walks off into the sunset, but we got 3 more episodes left. He still has that triggered dark power, if I'm certainly not mistaken. So I got to imagine that he pops back up at some point in time in the finale, at least to confront Carmeara or help out in the fight or whatever the case may be. But overall, decent and enjoyable episode, man. So I'm really excited to see where the rest of this season will certainly go. But listen, guys, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I want to know yours, though. What did you guys think of this particular episode? If there's anything that I missed, whether that be character moments, storyline details, and arcs that you further want to go ahead and discuss, let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below after this video airs, and we'll definitely continue this discussion until next week's episode. But until then, do me a big favor as always, guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.